This is a bustling, busy town. You can almost feel it bursting all round at the seams as you go about. Everybody's got work, and there's good money for practically everybody.
Scunthorpe in Lincolnshire, made by steel and booms.
When the BBC came to Scunthorpe in 1960, it found a boom town.
It's a town of material well-being, a busy, raw town with everywhere signs of expansion and change. Nothing must stand in the way of progress.
I think we'll learn to manage prosperity.
But now, as Newsnight has been finding out over the past 6 months, it's a very different place. A quintessential left-behind community, according to locals.
I mean, Scunthorpe's similar to any other northern working class town. There's a distinct lack of opportunity. There's less than there was 2 years ago. There's even less than there was 5 years ago.
My children have all left. My brothers and sisters have all left, so I'm on my own. Scunthorpe's a great little town, but if you've got ambition and drive, you really have to leave.
Not a thing in the world could make me stay here.
But the reality is that places like Scunthorpe haven't been left behind in the sense of being ignored by national government, at least from a policy perspective. In fact, there's been almost a century of attempts by the government to level up the UK economy, from the 1930s Special Areas Act to the Coalition's regional growth funds. The question is, why hasn't any of it worked?
So the main issue is that policy is very much thought about trying to protect what is in place, say like a steel plant or other more traditional manufacturing, rather than trying to help places adapt to the ever-changing nature of the national and international economy. So what we've seen is successful places have seen their economy shift away from, say, more traditional type activities to more high-tech type things, be that design or software development or things like that. But a lot of places that are struggling have seen their industry sort of switch from, say, from coal mines to call centres or dockyards to distribution centres. It's a movement from one set of low-skilled jobs to another set of low-skilled jobs with implications for wages, standards of living, etc.
The government's rhetoric has been more related to transport than skills. Boris Johnson is promising a £100 billion infrastructure revolution designed to benefit places like Scunthorpe in the North and the Midlands. And with good reason. Calculations by the IPPR North think tank suggest that if the North had had the same investment per person as London over the past decade, it would have received £66 billion more. Yet shiny new transport links alone are unlikely to level up the country, as a certain bridge 15 miles north of Scunthorpe shows.
The history of the Humber Bridge is a classic example of pork barrel politics. In the 1960s, the then Labour government gave it the go-ahead solely to win a local by-election. The bridge was touted as something that would regenerate the whole of the Humberside region by linking the south to the north side of the estuary. But it hasn't delivered on those promises. It's a monument to what can go wrong when regional infrastructure decisions are driven by short-term Westminster politics.
Less than 3% of residents on the south bank of the Humber work on the north side where the city of Hull sits, and vice versa. Back in Scunthorpe, I caught up with the owner of a cafe cooperative who recognises the problem.
The stretch of water that divides us is a big piece of water, both literally and metaphorically. So the Humber Bridge helped with that, but still there's other barriers to that. Scunthorpe and Hull don't always have the best relationship, or it's not necessarily the place most people in Scunthorpe think of when they think of the next big city or the next big town. Yeah, the two don't talk to each other as best as they could.
And that's part of the problem.
If we look at towns that do well across the country, because a lot of towns do very well, we see that they tend to be located close to a very successful city, and the successful city pulls them up as well. A place like Scunthorpe, that is not happening to the same extent because Hull has got huge issues itself. It's not generating jobs, it's not then pulling commuters in, but it's also not, acting as a sort of magnet to actually attract businesses into the area.
So what needs to change to make UK levelling up finally actually happen? Some say improving skills is fundamental.
So Paul, we've got a technical college there, we've got Scunthorpe Steelworks over there. Are you saying that should be just as important in priorities of policymakers as the steelworks?
Absolutely. What we need to do is really understand, what is the problem, and what is the cause of those problems, and then what does that mean for policy? And the principal element, not the only one, but the principal element is around skills. What are we going to do to get people with no formal qualifications, or very few qualifications, the skills that they need to get on in the world of work?
The view of most experts is that what's also needed is a devolution of power from Westminster, and not just over big transport infrastructure, but also things like buses, health and training. I went to see the former Labour MP for Scunthorpe, who lost his seat in December as he was packing up his constituency office.
Hi Ben, good to see you.
Nick Dakin agrees that devolution has been a missing piece of the jigsaw.
Yeah, I think it's far too much. Whitehall knows best. What we need is decisions being made to improve our area, which local people have purchase on.
Is that a frustration you found as an MP, that the sort of kind of things were cooked up in Whitehall and you were expected to sort of say thank you very much?
Yeah, very much so. Yes, and the reality is that ministers, of whatever persuasion, but particularly the most recent lot, like to make big announcements with big numbers attached to it, which doesn't actually necessarily translate into real things happening on the ground that benefit local people.
The government has promised a white paper on English devolution, but the big question is whether this Westminster government is truly committed to handing back power to communities like Scunthorpe, or whether, like so many others, it wills the ends of regional levelling up without providing the means.